Hello folks, this is Ron Simplified Myers. I'm glad to see you back here at video number 2. Just so you know, you're ahead of 90% or maybe even higher of people by coming to video number 2. Do you know to win in life, all you have to do is show up and you beat 90% of the people? I mean, when I first heard that, it amazed me to think that 90% of the people don't even show up. I've learned that in my life that to be true, unfortunately, that most people don't. They'll get started. It looks interesting. They'll make up stories for themselves and it'll stop them. Maybe stories based on their past, their beliefs that they've created from those stories. Whatever the reason is, people stop and they never finish. And then they look at people that do finish and call them lucky. There's no luck involved. It just happens to be if you see things through, for some reason you happen to get a result, and in most times it's the result that you want. And the reason is because you're fighting. If you're willing to fight, life will give you, and I learned that from our CEO in one of our companies, Art Williams, who made the comment, life will give you what you're willing to fight for. And if you're only willing to fight to be average and ordinary, that's exactly what life will give you. Through this series, I'm hoping that you decide that you want more out of life and that you are willing to fight. And really, that's the whole idea behind these steps, is to teach you that the fight is within. It's not outside. Your outside that you're seeing in your world is because the inside has not been taken care of. So that's really what we want to talk about, is how to get control of the inside. So again, in step 1, we talked about the thoughts, which we don't have control over. Don't worry about that fact. What we do want to focus on is what we do have control over, which is the stories. Because again, at this point in our lives, our stories are being written by accident. They're based on, the stories are being written based on our past experiences, what has happened to other people in this particular instance, and we go, this is what's going to happen. This is what usually happens when this occurs. But we write these stories, but there's no truth to it, but we've convinced ourselves that it is the truth. So what I want to do is teach you that what you have to do, and this is what separates us from animals, is the fact that we as human beings do have the ability to pause or stop. I mean, whatever word you want to use. But whenever something happens, we're able to sit back and analyze it. Animals, for example, they work on a stimulus response world. In other words, if you do something to them, they instantly respond. Unfortunately, most human beings are operating on that same system. That's why a lot of people say we're no different than animals. But we do have a mechanism within us that does allow us the opportunity, and we have to practice it though, to pause when something happens or to stop when something happens and analyze the situation and then determine what course of action we should take. That's really what stories are all about. Right now, we're living in that world I just talked about where you get a stimulus, you just respond. What I want you to do is start to write a different story when things occur. So from this point forward, whenever something happens, take all the different thoughts that are going to come into your head, analyze them, and figure out which story, because you're going to write one anyway, which story is going to move you forward. In other words, you can walk out of the house today and feel like a superhuman being, whether it's Superman, Batman, or whatever you want to use. You could convince yourself that is true. And there are people that are living like that also. We've seen them. So you do have the power to do that. And what I want you to do is learn to use that power, because it can help you get total control over the way you see the world and the way that you're living. So this is what I want to do. Some of you have already figured this out, but I want you to take the piece of paper that we did on step 1, which were the thoughts that we threw on the paper. I want you to separate those if you haven't already done that, and that's put the things that you don't want on the left side, the things that you do want on the right side. Make sure that list is very, very thorough. Now, as you're writing this list, here's a tip that I actually learned from Michael Losier. That's Losier. He's the how-to guy on the law of attraction. again, I learned the principle of drawing a line down the piece of paper as a sales technique long time ago, that it helps you in your decision-making process. That on the left, again, there's things you don't, why you should not move forward. On the right side, you put down the reasons you should move forward. You add up the totals of the columns, makes a decision for you. Of course, as an agent, you're going to help the person put more on the reasons why they should move forward. And when you get through, they realize they should move forward. That's again why I learned different ways of doing business, because I'm not one that likes to play games. I don't want to use techniques and all that kind of stuff. I'd rather just be honest with people and straightforward. But anyway, what I learned from Michael Losier that made a lot of sense is the left side, the things you don't want, can actually be a good friend of yours. Why do I say that? Because it will help you complete the right side, which is what you do want. Because you can ask people, like in a relationship, what is it that you want in a relationship? And most of us can rattle off a couple of things of what we actually want. But when you ask a person what they don't want in a relationship, and I can see most of you now, you got a book going at this point. I mean, you could write 2 or 3 volumes. You can get a whole series of books going at this point, because we can look at our past, things that have happened in other relationships, and we know what we don't want. Here's why that becomes your friend. Because the opposite of what you don't want is, you got it, what you want. So what I want you to do is stop the video right now, go to that exercise, separate the two if you haven't already did on the thoughts, and again, get very, very thorough, because this exercise that you're doing now is going to be the deciding factor on whether you get your goals or not. I'll see you in a second.